In this thought-provoking message, Earl Nightingale explores profound themes of self-discovery, personal fulfillment, and the transformative power of ideas. With a focus on balancing material success with inner growth, Nightingale challenges us to assess our lives by the quality of our thoughts and actions. He encourages us to move beyond superficial achievements and strive toward a life filled with purpose and meaning. By examining the role of ideas, character, and balance in our journey, this timeless wisdom serves as a guide for anyone seeking true success and personal fulfillment.
This is Earl Nightingale with the first issue of Direct Line. The purpose of this new program is to explore ideas, the best ideas from the past and present as they pertain to you and me and the mystery of our lives. Ideas about people, why they do the things they do, and why they don't do some of the things they could do. Why they live the way they do, believe the way they do, work and play the way they do. Our most distinguished and eloquent researchers in the field of psychology and psychiatry tell us that our affluent society has not brought us happiness and joy. On the contrary, people in the highly developed, wealthy nations of the world seem to be suffering from a malaise made up of boredom, apathy, and general depression. We know that people are at their best, that is, they seem to be happiest and most energetic, when they're striving toward the fulfillment of what seems to them to be good and worthy ideas. Isn't that true? People move mountains and dance and sing far into the night when they're swept up by a great idea. There's something about the human creature that makes him godlike when he's moved by a great idea, and apathetic, bored, and depressed when he's not. Wherever you find boredom, you'll find the absence of a good idea. In a child or an adult, people are depressed and bored when they know deep down in the very fibers of their being that the life they're living is not what it could be, not what it ought to be. We suffer from an all-pervading feeling of guilt when we're living below our true capacities in our work and in our play. And it's beginning to dawn upon the people everywhere that we've been chasing a mistaken concept of what success is all about. We've confused means with ends. We'll find success, each of us in his own way, when we find ourselves, and when we do, all things that we want and need will be added to our lives. The journey of self-discovery, the journey into meaning, is the most exciting on earth and the most rewarding. When we're gripped by a good idea, a succession of good ideas really, because one leads to another, we're at our best, our happiest. We may not know that we're happy, but we are, and our lives are characterized by a feeling of worth, of purpose. Ideas bring the fresh, clean air of renewal into our lives, into our home lives, into our business lives. The real fun of life is in continually bridging the gap which lies between where we are and where we want to be, and from what we are to what we wish to become. There are three main departments of living with which we should concern ourselves and in which we should succeed. They are, number one, our family lives. Number two, the way we spend our days, on the job and off. And number three, our income. The purpose of this program is to help us find more meaning, more real success in each of these vital departments. First, just a word about listening. You know, when we listen, and especially to information that involves us personally, our minds only pay attention to what we're hearing until something we hear triggers an idea in our minds. Now, at that instant, our minds tune out and concentrate on the new thought. It's like lifting the tone arm on a record player. We no longer hear anything, but the record keeps turning. Now, when you hear something in direct line that sparks an idea, you tune me out for whatever time you devote to the idea. You'll do this repeatedly. The next time you listen, you'll tune out at different times. Because of the way we listen and because our attention will dart from what we're hearing to what we're thinking about, it's necessary to hear a spoken message several times just to hear it for the first time. And even weeks, months, or years later, it will spark new ideas. So if it's convenient, stop the player whenever you want to think about something you hear. Perhaps you want to make a note of what you've heard or think about it for some time. Then, when you're ready to resume, start the player again, and so on. If you're driving your car or if the whole family's listening, that might not be practicable. But even with stops and starts, repeated listening is necessary to make what you hear a part of your way of thinking and doing things. Unfortunately, we don't learn much from something we read only once. If it were printed, it would take time away from other things. In audio form, it can be listened to while we're doing other things, such as commuting to and from work, while traveling on business calls, while dressing, having breakfast, while relaxing after a long day, and so on. Moreover, in this form, it can be heard by all members of the family. If it were only in printed form, it's unlikely that it would be read by more than one, two at most. Another important reason for the cassette tape is that listening is our most effective and effortless way of obtaining information, the most natural way to learn anything. We learned by listening for many years as children before we learned to read. You see, we pluck ideas from speech as we might catch fish from a flowing river. We're not even conscious of the words being used. We listen for ideas, and that's what this program is all about. We learn to read by listening. And for most, reading remains something of a mechanical process from which ideas must be constructed. And finally, the spoken word carries so much more interest and flavor, so much more meaning, and an emotional impact impossible with the printed word. Well, let's begin with this great thought. It has appeared in many forms in man's literature, but I believe it was Emerson who put it best. Nature magically suits the man to his fortunes by making these the fruit of his character. We might experience some difficulty in finding out what we're really like by trying to look inward, but we have only to look about us at our fortunes, for they are the fruit of our character. The late Dr. Maslow, former president of the American Psychological Association, said you judge a person the same way you judge an apple tree, by his fruit, by what he produces. Do you go along with that? It's hard not to, isn't it? Well, what is character? My Random House on a Bridge says character is the aggregate of features and traits that form the apparent individual nature of some person or thing. My Oxford English Dictionary gives as its first definition a distinctive mark, impressed, engraved, or otherwise formed, a brand, a stamp. Any person who has had the chance to live as an adult for any appreciable length of time begins to collect about him what we can call his fortunes. They represent a merciless mirror of him as a person. They reflect his nature and constitute, in total, a distinctive mark, a brand, a stamp. Just as you can tell the name of a fruit tree by examining its fruit, you can tell a great deal about a person in the same way. And we can tell a great deal about ourselves. We surround ourselves in an environment, in circumstances, as Professor Jose Ortega y Gasset used the word, which reflect us, and which include our true beliefs. No matter how loudly we talk about what we believe in, our circumstances reflect our true beliefs. They show to others what is important to us. They reflect our degree of maturity at any given stage of our lives. You see, our fortunes are simply the sum total of what we want and believe we are qualified to receive at any given stage of our lives. For our fortunes should change. They should not just accumulate as we get older, they should change in quality. Change to reflect the changing person. If they do not change, it is an indication that we are not changing. If they do not grow in quality, it's an indication that we are not growing and maturing as persons. Our fortunes are the fruit of our character, and our character changes. Someone once said to Dr. Robert Hutchins when he was Chancellor of the University of Chicago with regard to adult education, that you can't teach old dogs new tricks. To which Dr. Hutchins replied, human beings are not dogs, and education is not a bag of tricks. We can grow through knowledge with good ideas, and as we grow, our worlds will change to reflect our growth. We outgrow our old selves and shake them off like stiff cocoons, no longer big enough to contain us, and that's as it should be. That's the way a person, a family, an organization of any kind should grow. We might say that a person, or an organization, will grow in proportion to two main conditions. The first concerns his degree of receptivity. Are his windows open to the fresh breeze of renewal in the form of new ideas and creative thinking? Many persons, in organizations are closed systems. They've got their windows closed and locked, apparently in the belief that they're already the repository of all useful information. We can all name such persons and such organizations, some quite large, but shrinking. The one thing that always typifies a closed system is that it ultimately begins to shrink, and it will eventually die if it stays closed long enough. Any person or persons making up the management of any sort of organization who feel no need for new ideas, or who do not challenge their own beliefs from time to time, are on the road down toward stagnation and decay. And the second condition governing a person's or organization's growth will be determined by the source or sources of ideas. Now, if our ideas come to us only from those by whom we're habitually surrounded, those who live much as we do, we'll tend to do little more than reiterate and fortify the ideas we already live by. That's also true in an organizational sense. A person can be said to be an organization, indeed a highly complex organization. Like any other sort of organization, the overall success will be determined by the quality of management. Just as the success of any business or other organization depends for its success or failure upon its management, so does the success or failure of a person depend upon the way he manages himself. We're all units of production. We produce things and words and attitudes which reflect our management, and the quality of our product, our total product, will be determined by the quality of our own self-management. Now, we can determine the quality of our overall product by simply assessing what we're being paid for it. It's true for a person, or for a business firm, or any sort of organization. And we might say the quality of our management will be determined by the quality of our ideas. The main ideas of our lives are the main roads on which we travel. So where do we get most of our ideas? When you ask about the extent of a person's education, you must ask, who were his teachers? We need to ask ourselves the same question. We can change, we can grow, and as we change and grow, our fortunes will reflect that change and growth. That our character is the architect of our fortunes is an interesting idea, isn't it? It's so interesting that it could bring about a significant change in our way of living. It could modify or completely change our goals in life. It gives us a way of assessing the quality and the importance of the product we're producing in each of our important divisions. Let's say a company has 3 divisions. 2 are doing well, 1 is losing money. Now, the one that's losing money, provided it's been losing money for some time, would seem to indicate that it has poor management, or else it produces a product or service without sufficient demand on the part of those it would serve. Now, the same can be said to be true of the different departments of our lives. Quite often a person will be great in one department and poor in another. Great on the job at making a living, perhaps, but poor at home, or great at home and poor on the job. I think we can safely say that every relatively normal person wants to succeed in each of the 3 main departments of living. In his family life, in the way he spends his days, that is, the work he's chosen and the way he chooses to spend his free time. It's surprising, how many people tend to forget that they chose their work of their own free will, just as they chose their spouses of their own free will, and the main direction of their lives of their own free will. And we all want to succeed in the income department. That is, we want an income sufficient to fulfill our wants, not just our needs, but our wants as well. Now, we control our rewards in each of these departments. If we've been adults for any real length of time, and if we've achieved any real maturity, we must admit to ourselves that our rewards in each department are commensurate with our management, with our success in interacting with those upon whom our success depends. Now, that's an idea we will accept or reject, depending upon whether our windows are open or closed. I mentioned earlier that we often confuse means with ends. For example, an automobile is a means to an end. It's a means of getting from point A to point B. Money is a means to an end. It's the means to the kind of life we want to live. It represents financial security now and in our later years. It represents good health, education, travel, a good home, and so forth. Now, in our society, these means to ends and others have often been confused with ends. The automobile, or money, in itself has become an object of veneration, not for what it will do for us to make life more convenient and more pleasurable, but rather for what it is in itself. We tend to worship objects in our society. And finally, we find ourselves in possession of all the objects we ever wanted, and we stand in the middle of them and look at them and come to the realization that they're not enough, not nearly enough. A human being needs more, much more than a pile of objects, important as some of them are. And that's one of the reasons we find so much depression, so much boredom and apathy about us. People have what they wanted. Why aren't they happy? Could it be that they've not moved on to other, larger, and more worthwhile goals? I think so. George Bernard Shaw said that it is the first duty of every man not to be poor. I agree with that. Poverty has never brought happiness. We see it staring from the hunger-ravaged faces of the world's underprivileged. We see it in our ghettos. But there are 2 kinds of income, psychic and tangible. Now, psychic income is the income of the mind and feelings, the kind we get when we look at our loved ones or when we've done a good job. Psychic income is the income the firemen get roaring through town with the sirens screaming. It's the income a police officer knows when he straps on his revolver and assumes the authority of his uniform. There's psychic income that comes with a promotion, with the executive suite. It's excitement and satisfaction, and it's perhaps the most important income we receive from our life's work. We can make a living, we can get rich doing many things. But psychic riches come from being in the kind of work we like, doing the things we want to do. Konrad Lorenz, in his excellent book, On Aggression, tells us that the drive to fulfill oneself, to realize if possible the potential of one's unique endowment, is coded in our genetic instructions. And it's going contrary to our genetic instructions that causes us anxiety, guilt. We seem to know that there's a way to live that's better than the one we're settling for. Now, families, schools, society all work to fit us into established pigeonholes, and for some it's fine. For others, the shoe doesn't fit. It hurts. It rubs and chafes and can become agonizingly painful. No psychic income there. So those must seek it off the job in hobbies and avocations, or change the job. But we need to get it somewhere. Psychic income is an important part of our income picture. As to financial income, it should meet our requirements. What those requirements are is a matter of individual taste. Our income should be sufficient for us to live in the style we most enjoy, have the things we think are important, do the things we want to do, see the places we want to see, and perhaps help others who didn't manage or couldn't manage to work it out for themselves. In a society such as ours, it can be said that not every person can find the kind of gainful employment that forms a perfect fit with his aptitudes, likes, and dislikes. Many factors work to hold a person in a particular place and at a particular job other than the amiability of the job itself. But I do believe that almost every thinking, growing, maturing person can find the work he enjoys. And for the rest, the deep sources of satisfaction and interest can come from experiences not connected with their work. For some, their work is the very mainstay of their lives. For others, it's simply the means to an end. Many people are quite content to not work at all. Most retired people enjoy their retirement and wouldn't change things for the world. But for some, active, mind-engaging work is as necessary as food and drink. For many women, running a home, raising their children, caring for their husbands, and 1,001 things necessary to that life are more than enough for all the satisfaction they need. They're quite content with their lives, as they should be. For other women, such a life is unthinkable, the way to madness. They need other interests, other lives. To expect that 50% of the human race should be content with keeping house and raising a family is ridiculous. It's as ridiculous as it would be to expect all men to be lawyers or bricklayers.